Welcome to the morning meeting where we are hinged as opposed to unhinged. Thank you for joining. Sean, Dan, and I are delighted to have you with us, whether you're watching on YouTube or here on the two-way platform. Please participate. If you're here on two-way and you want to get in the conversation, raise your hand. We love new people. We love old people too, young people, all sorts of people. But if you've never participated in the conversation, please consider joining. We had some great first-timers yesterday. Fantastic way to hear from new voices. So please participate. So today, I'm going to go through the today, but I'll say the way I'm thinking about the next 48 hours is both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris each have a pair of, I think, pretty important public events. In the case of Kamala Harris, she's doing her interview with Charlamagne tha God in Michigan today, and then her Bret Baier interview tomorrow. I think both of those are potentially great for her and potentially problematic. Donald Trump, same thing, a pair of events. One is his interview with John Micklethwait in Chicago today about the economy. Very rare to have either candidate sit down with somebody as smart and as dogged as John is. And then he's got a town hall, all women town hall in Georgia with Fox. So 4 big events. I'm curious to see. Dan and I, communicating offline, both think that the confidence of the Democrats rose yesterday, and we can talk about why that is. But yesterday was a good day on the Harris side. So once again, she's not doing very much today. She's in Detroit. She had no public events, at least as of now, until her interview with Charlamagne tha God at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Kind of unusual and interesting. Noon Eastern, Donald Trump, Economic Club of Chicago, the interview with Bloomberg's John Micklethwait. Then he pre-tapes his town hall in Georgia, and then his 7:30 rally in Atlanta. Tim Walz is doing a bunch of events in Western Pennsylvania. J.D. Vance has a town hall in Pennsylvania. Joe Biden is in Philadelphia doing some campaigning, which is unusual for him these days. So we shall see. So we're going to look backwards a little bit to last night because both candidates had events in Pennsylvania that are still kind of reverberating around the political and media world. So Donald Trump did this rally. It was supposed to be not a rally. It was supposed to be a town hall. He took a couple questions. 2 audience members got sick, and Trump did kind of a closing remarks, which Democrats are pretending he didn't do. And then he said, hit the music. And he stayed dancing like it is for almost an hour. 101, please.
This is a man's world. This is a man's world. But it wouldn't be nothing.
So if you're a Republican and you're not hostile to Trump and you watch the entire event, you would just see Trump was sort of bored with the format, wanted to play music. The room was so hot, he didn't want more people to faint. So he ended the event in an unorthodox way. It's definitely unorthodox. The Democrats are painting it as like Trump is now fully mental and unhinged. And Kamala Harris tweeted at him, "Are you okay?" This is the classic thing where the Democrats seem to feel like, well, this is something we can really drive the news cycle with because Trump is insane. And the Republicans are like, are you insane? If you watch the whole thing, there's nothing insane about it. We'll discuss that in a second. But I will say that was what it was good for Democrats. And I think what got them aggressive about it was Kamala Harris was already on the unhinged train at her event where she, noted plagiarist of ideas of Donald Trump, see what I did there, did for the first time, I believe, something Trump does at his rallies, which is she went to the big screen and she played some video of Trump to show the audience and get everybody riled up and get the media to focus on her message in a more vivid way. 102, please.
I've said for a while now, watch his rallies. Listen to his words. He tells us who he is. And he tells us what he would do if he is elected president. So here tonight, I will show you one example of Donald Trump's worldview and intentions. Please roll the clip.
The worst people are the enemies from within.
The enemy from within. Those people are more dangerous, the enemy from within, than Russia and China.
These people should be put in jail the way they talk about
our judges and our justices. Now, if you had one really violent day, one rough hour, and I mean real rough. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
Whether this will be Kamala Harris's message today or for the next 3 weeks, but last night it was her message, reminiscent of the Biden message when he was the nominee. This person is unstable and unhinged, and the people who've worked closest with him do not trust him to be president. There's a new Harris ad with those lines. And then finally, here it is from her own mouth, 102, please.
I've said for a while now, watch his rallies. Listen to his words. Donald Trump is increasingly unstable and unhinged. And he is out for unchecked power. That's what he's looking for. He wants to send the military after American citizens. He has worked to prevent women from making their own health care decisions and threaten your fundamental freedoms and rights, like the freedom to vote, the freedom to be safe from gun violence, the freedom to...
So, Dan, what do you think accounts for what you and I both sensed yesterday, which is more confidence than Democrats on the weekend? Is it simply the fact that there weren't any polls released? Why were Democrats more confident yesterday?
I think this is the fight that Democrats have wanted. And, you hear it on here. I hear it from friends, family, people in New York. Yes, inflation, the economy, immigration, safety are important, but they always come back to, but he's crazy. What he says at his rallies, the late night tweets, like a lot of Democrats have wanted to elevate this fight. And I think the campaign, because not only did Kamala Harris say this yesterday, Tim Walz actually drove this same message. So they've come as far as they're going to get, closing the gap on the economy, on inflation, on immigration. Yes, she's going to try to target, Black men with some small policy specifics. But this fight to elevate kind of out of the trees for the whole forest is what I think Democrats have been dying, to hear. And, bringing up the Supreme Court, bringing up abortion. And I also think tactically, this is about those suburban voters that we've heard in focus groups who say, I like Trump's policies, but I really don't like the person. These are people who can kind of afford bacon and the price, that it is today. And they want to really just bring back to the forefront, when you go into the voting booth, do you really want to go back to all of this crazy? And I think Democrats are excited today that they're doing this.
Sean.
I think it was just Columbus Day. They all had a day off, so they were excited. I feel like she said one thing yesterday. She is so desperate message-wise. We'll see if this sticks, but I think that if we've watched the iteration of what she has said, who knows what she'll come up with tomorrow. There is a list that is way too long to go through of all of the falsehoods that she told in that speech. I don't even know where to begin with some of it, but the bottom line is, look, I go back to what we said at the beginning. We're 21 days out. She's got one event at 5:00, and it's a taped interview with Charlemagne the God on iHeart. This is not a campaign that looks like it's. If you're the underdog, you're selling that you're out there hustling. She is not doing that. She's throwing out some tidbits. And I think this reeks of desperation. The idea that you've now gone through issues, you shunned Joe Biden when he said he was a threat to democracy as an issue, and now you're back to it because I think they've realized that this is the only thing they have left. We'll see how long it sticks.
Sean,
yeah.
Let me ask you a question. So, is there anything? I know the dominant reaction to this from Trump and Mar-a-Lago will be what yours is. This is desperate. This has been tried. There was nothing unhinged about Trump. She's the one unhinged, blah, blah, blah. Is there any way in which this could win the election, this argument in your mind? Is it possible that this is the winning argument that keeps Trump at 47%?
Sure. because I think, look, we've always said there's data, right? What is that small group of folks what's that message that's working? My guess is that they have been constantly testing this, and this is the one last thing that at least looks like it moves the needle. I mean, I've got to assume, but also let's remember the context, right? This is one day. Let's see if it sticks around tomorrow and the day after. Like, if we're talking about this on Friday, I think we know for certain that this is something they fundamentally believe in. Or was this a trial balloon to see how the audience reacted? We'll know in a day or two. I don't see that. I will say, though, that on my side, I was blown away by the fact that there are credible allegations of her plagiarizing, which, when she said on The View that there's nothing different than she does than Joe Biden, now I realize that includes plagiarism.
But I'm bummed.
Yeah, well, I had to use that somewhere. So I think it's amazing. And the New York Times is conservatives make allegations. It's like, no. Plagiarism is plagiarism. She cut and pasted from Wikipedia, from Martin Luther King, and now it's conservatives make allegations. These are credible allegations. And it is amazing the length to which at this phase that they are covering her up. And then I also would just argue that I think I'm very proud of what Glenn Youngkin is doing, following the lead of our previous Democratic governors here in Virginia, and apparently now he's being sued for a law that was signed into law a law that was signed in by Tim Kaine that was followed by Terry McAuliffe and other Democrats, Dan's old boss, and now suddenly we're the bad guys.
The plagiarism thing is interesting because, as you pointed out, the New York Times wrote a story, but they wrote a story basically saying conservatives make false charges, right? Like, I'm not sure why they thought they should write the story, maybe because they didn't want to be accused of burying it completely. I will say, on balance, it appears to be plagiarism. It's not very much plagiarism, and it's not like brilliant ideas. It's more like some facts. But I will point out, as I've said before, this stuff proves that there's more to come potentially. That just because someone has been a senator and vice president and a vice presidential candidate doesn't mean everything's come out. And the fact that 3 weeks to go, for the first time somebody unearthed this, I'm telling you, there's more to come, even though we have 3 weeks to go.
You know what, though? But here's the thing, though, then I think this goes to what I said earlier. Like, Joe Biden likes to say, compare me to the alternative, not the almighty. This is what has driven Democrats nuts. We're going to talk about, whether she plagiarized years ago and her background. And yet, Trump has his own history. We can pick any time in the last 40 years of controversial issues. Democrats want to go higher up with the conversation to right now. Like, I actually think, like, if it's this backwards looking, like, what did she say 15 years? Like, this is actually plays into the Democratic wheelhouse. I think they're going to just try to push Trump closer to the sun and hope that the more he opens his mouth, because we know the more he's in public, the more people hear from him. It's not good.
Yeah, but the point that I would make, Dan, is that on the Dem side, you guys want to make character an issue. Trump's got these flaws. Okay, fine, right? We want to make this a policy argument. But if you want to make it a personality or a character issue, then we get to play that game too, right? Course, you can't say, oh, Trump's got all these flaws. He does all this bad stuff. This is what he says. And then you go, yeah, but Harris did. Okay, well, you can't talk about that.
I hear you, Sean, but it's kind of like during the debate, right? Where you would hear Democrats say, oh, Harris did a small lie and Trump's lies were big lie, right? And like, why would the moderators focus on a small lie? Every politician has small lies. Like, I totally hear you. I'm just saying, I think for Democrats, the reason they're excited is there is a sense that this is going to a higher elevation, and it's where they've wanted to be now for months.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I think that, look, to me, I've always thought that going, like, people I mean, she keeps talking about turning the page. I think that message, I didn't understand who she was talking about. I agree. I want to turn the page too. The last 4 years have been horrible. And she can't give policy answers. So I actually will agree with you that I think this is the strongest leg for her to stand on. But it's just amazing how the evolution to get here has been such as it is. I just wonder, to go back to my original point, how much this is where the data is suggesting that there are at least persuadable or movable people at this point, or motivating people.
Yeah.
All right,
and look,
three things.
I was going to say one last thing, because I see this all over X, like Republicans saying this reeks of desperation. The definition of insanity is if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Like, yeah, Harris is changing course. She is doing different things and has a different message. Like, amen, if you want to change the trajectory.
All right, three things real quick. Number one, lots of hands up, including lots of new people excited about that. Going to get to your questions momentarily. Two, I have to go because I am like a shark. I must keep moving or bad things happen. So I'm going to leave the program for now in the hands of Dan and Sean, and American Transportation and Pete Buttigieg willing. I will see you at 6 p.m. Eastern time tonight on two-way tonight. And then, of course, again here tomorrow at 9 a.m. in a more stable environment. So, guys, thank you. Take over. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Dan, let's talk about the pandas for a minute. I'm just kidding.
Let's bring everyone together here.
Yeah, let's talk about pandas.
Exactly.
Should we just get to questions? I think that I think that's
yeah, I mean, I think the only other thing that Mark had mentioned here is just, best and worst case scenarios for both of these interviews, both Harris and Trump. And, I know some people are saying it in the chat, like, to state the obvious, the worst case scenario for Harris is she puts her foot in her mouth and, either has a brain freeze or just, a horrific word salad. And I think the best case for her is for those who remember 2010, when Barack Obama was really struggling that winter, and he went to the House Republican Conference and took Republican questions and really just looked calm, comfortable, and in command dealing with them. And, for Harris, if she goes on Fox and she doesn't sweat and looks, strong and in control, that'll be a good outcome for her.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. I'm glad you pointed it out. I would say watch Charlemagne the God today. I have a feeling he is not a friendly interview. And I mean, the guy's tough. And I've been watching a bunch of his clips. There's a lot of issues that he's been calling Harris out for, on transgender issues, on stuff that, and again, if you're going to appeal to black men, I have a feeling this is going to be a very tough interview. And this is one where you could have a clip come out a la The View that you're not ready for. On the Trump side, I think we've said this before. I have a hard time believing that some random speech is going to generate anything new that we've seen or anything that's going to move the needle. Who knows? But I mean, if he stayed on message, that would probably be news. But I don't see that happening. I'm intrigued. I will give her credit. I think we've talked about this before of the Charlemagne thing is interesting because I think a lot of people are going to perceive that as a friendly interview. It's not. There's talk now about her and Trump both going on Joe Rogan. She's doing the Brett Baer thing. And I'll tell you, I think that, listen, I think this is a smart move because I think Brett will treat her very respectfully. He wants Fox to be seen in a very professional manner. And so I think it's actually going to be interesting. I think you're going to have more outrage on the right because of how well he treats her and how it's handled. Fox really wants this to be seen as, see, we can do one of these and do it well and be credible and kind and respectful. And I think you're going to see more outrage on the right than the left with that, how that thing goes. So that is what I would throw
as a
out.
Democrat, I take it as a smart move because Trump went on social media last night railing against Fox for doing this.
Yeah.
That's always a good sign that like you're doing something right.
Well, Fox is going to play. I mean, they already are. There's a little box in the corner and Fox and Friends this morning. They're going to play this up. It's going to get big ratings. It's an audience that she doesn't usually get to speak to. So I think Trump's going to be pissed. And I, like I said, if anything, I think you're going to see more outrage on the right than the left. The one thing that I just want to put a pin in this, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of it, but I want to make sure that everyone knows that we're behind the scenes, at least monitoring this. I do think, and it's in Politico this morning, so I'm not trying to take full credit for this, but I will say this issue of lawfare on both sides of getting ready legally for the day after is something that we will keep an eye on. So don't think that we're not talking about it or keep an eye on it. But I will say that in a way that we've never seen before, I think you're going to see every lawyer in America somehow get employed on November 6th if this thing is as close as we think it is. All right. Can I just, Michelle Kidd, I don't think I've seen you ask a question before. So Mark, I think you might be one of the new people that Mark's referring to. Am I right, or am I just getting too old?
No, you're correct. I have never I have
Okay.
never talked to
Where are you from? Why am I the best? That's I think, and then and who are you voting for, and who did you vote for?
You are the best, and I'm very nervous. I've been watching this every single episode from the beginning. So first time I decided to raise my hand. So thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
I actually live in Florida, and I am going to be reluctantly voting for Trump this year. Just because I live in Florida, don't assume I'm a Republican or voting for Trump just because of that. I've actually always voted for a Democrat. I actually was despondent when Hillary did not win in 2016. I voted for Biden in 2020, and I was just not going to vote for anybody this year up until the past, I would say, 6 months or so.
What was the issue or issues that made you factored into your decision?
I think it was kind of a slow burn of things that started to happen maybe a year and a half ago, where I felt that the Democratic Party was just going too far to the left, going too far with things that just didn't make sense to me in terms of just common sense. It started with cancel culture, the real kind of bearing down on identity politics, the gender thing, not being able to define what a woman is, all of those things. So yes, while the economy is important, inflation is important, immigration is important to me, there's just a lot of these common sense, things where it's just kind of like, I can't believe that they are standing for these types of men and women's sports, those types of things.
Michelle, do you have children?
I do. I have teenagers. I have an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old.
Male, I mean, boy or girl?
Boy and girl.
Okay. Where can I ask? Not necessarily where, because I don't want to out your location, but were you affected by the storm?
Not like most people in Florida. We live in the Tampa Bay area, so we were in the line of sight. So we did get a lot of just debris and flooding in our area, but nothing anywhere near what's, is being.
So among your friend group, do you think that you are an outlier, that you believe these issues are driving just you, or is this something that a lot of other folks are talking about and share your concerns?
I am not an outlier. And that's what I wanted to say, is that I am somebody that's a lifelong Democrat. I'm registered as a Democrat. And I know many people within my friend group that would never have voted for Trump in a million years. And now they feel like they have no choice. And it's not, and I just wanted to say, it's not that I support Trump or that I love Trump or that I'm a Trump fan. It's almost that I would vote for anything that is against the other side right now, because, I could make a list of just some of the things that I just mentioned that I just can't support.
So last question for you. The Democrats have made abortion a massive issue with voters like you. How does that factor into your decision making?
It doesn't. And I hate to say that, because when Roe versus Wade was overturned, that day that happened, I don't know that I broke into tears, but I wanted to. I'm definitely pro-choice. That is an important issue for me. I never thought that could happen. But what I feel is that while abortion is important, there are 17 other things that are currently more important than that. And it takes precedence. So abortion would be way down on the list amongst all these other things that I feel are just way more important, just in terms of just things that are affecting my life. Not only my life, but other people's lives, children's lives. That to me is more important. So abortion, I mean, that might have won elections 2 years ago, 4 years ago for the Democrats, but right now there are so many other things that are more important. And I just wanted to speak up, because I'm just your typical suburban mom, actual Democrat. And everybody that I talk to in my friend group, whether I work with them, I'm friends with them, and not just in Florida. I have family in California. I know people in other states, and we all feel the same way.
Well, first, yeah, I mean, you're an excellent spokesperson here. Thank you for coming on and sharing. Look, I'll say, obviously, the Trump campaign would agree with you. They're running ads on these issues. I think some of these ads are really good. I live in New York City. The number of people I know who feel similar to you, that some of this stuff has gone too far, is pretty high. And I think even the Democratic Party as a whole would say it's gone too far. James Carville has been talking about this a lot. And look, Kamala Harris isn't standing by a lot of previous statements that she made on some of these cultural issues from 2020. And the party does appear to be moving back to the middle, which is where I think you exemplify very well the middle of most of the country sits.
And I just wanted to mention, I know that Trump is apparently not doing well with women, where Kamala is. Yep. And I don't know where that polling comes from. I'm not really sophisticated in terms of who are they polling? How do they know that? Is this amongst Republicans or everyone? But I can't think of one woman that I have spoken to just anecdotally in my life that doesn't feel very offended and almost betrayed by the Democratic Party when it comes just to the issues of men and women's sports, not being able to define a woman. We have a member on the Supreme Court that would not define what a woman is, right. That she couldn't do it. Kind of indoctrinating little kids into thinking that it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It kind of takes the essence away and the beauty away from womanhood, so it makes us feel like we're being betrayed in a way, like they care more about men that want to become women than actual women. And that as a woman, hits me emotionally. It hits us emotionally. So while abortion is important, this is something that is actually happening in our everyday lives. And I don't hear any Democrat, sticking up for women because they won't define what a woman is. Yeah. And I don't hear that talked a lot about just in the mainstream media or on any platform, actually. But that's what real women are feeling. That's what real women are talking about. It's just this feeling like we have been betrayed by the Democratic Party for all of these different reasons that I just mentioned.
Well,
so it's just amazing to me that Trump is not doing better than women. And I would bet that he actually is doing better with women on this issue. Because like I said, I haven't talked to a woman who isn't upset about those particular issues.
Well, I think this is one of the questions is, Trump is hoping a lot of people who don't vote very often turn out. Democrats believe the same to be true, but they believe that women will turn out at very high number. I do know a lot of women for whom the choice issue is a huge issue. So I don't want to say that is not, there are millions. But one of the questions is, if a lot of women turn out, to your point, do they all vote for Kamala Harris, or are there going to be other issues here in New York City? I know Israel is another issue that may override abortion in terms of what is most important. It's something that we're just going to have to see,
And that's another thing that just pushed me more and more towards the Republican side. It's just the stance on Israel, these campus protests. I could go on and on. We don't have time this morning.
Well,
there's so many issues that Michelle, I just feel like I don't care who the Republican is. I'm not going to vote for the Democrat unless they're willing to stand up just for some of these common sense, normal things, so it really doesn't matter who's running on the Democratic side unless they're willing to be where the middle of the country is. So
yeah, Michelle, thank you for joining us this morning and having the courage to speak up. I think what's great about this platform, we've seen so many individuals over the last couple of weeks who might not normally feel comfortable sharing their personal views, explain to people what they feel. And that's the great thing about this, is there's times when it's going to be someone come down on my side or Dan's side, but we get to hear the explanation, right? What's motivating you, what's driving you. And that's helpful for all of us to understand the other side. And so the dialogue, Mark says it all the time, there's nowhere else that you're going to hear this. And sometimes we may not agree with it, but I think the beauty is that we get insight into the thinking of not just fellow voters, but our citizens about issues that will affect us well past November 5th. So thank you for raising your hand, for speaking. I know it's not always easy. We appreciate it. And hopefully you'll come back and share this with others.
Yes, thank you for letting me share. Appreciate it.
All right, Dan, you want to pick one?
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Don't go with, I see Gerald there. I don't know if you're just going to get sucked into the Mets issue, but.
Yeah, I have limited insight here. I'll go to the first one on the top left. I'm going to mispronounce this. Diana Bresinger. Am I pronouncing that right? Okay. Let's see if we can unmute you. Or you may have to do it yourself. There you go.
Hi there. Hi there. So thank you for unmuting me. I am from Tennessee. I've spoken, I think, a couple of times on this before. And I hate to be like the last person, except she was brilliant. And I'm going to go in a couple of days. And I would say 99% sure going to vote for Trump. And I went from being a never Trumper, to be honest, to that. So I had a couple of quick things to say. The first is to tell everybody, if they can, to watch Sean's show from this past Sunday night, where he had all the people talking with the battleground states. I have a friend from Michigan who is a political junkie, and basically all the inside scoop she had was completely true, according to this person, and it made me believe everybody else. The other thing I just wanted to say real quickly on why I changed my opinion, it's J.D. Vance. And I'm wondering kind of how important the VP is to other people, if you think that. It took me 8 days and 8 glasses of wine to get through the presidential debate. Okay. That's why, it's like every question, another glass of wine, and I have a limit of 1 glass a day. On the VP debate, I watched it, and I watched it twice, and J.D. Vance, I am comfortable with him lining up to be behind Trump. And to be honest, I wish he was ahead of Trump, but he's the reason I'm going to vote. So that's kind of just, answer it or not, or go to somebody else. But I'm just wondering if that is a factor that's going to play in very much for other people.
Diane, I have one quick question for you on that, and thank you for sharing. So you found Vance to be, affirmative. He sealed the deal for you. Did you find Walz disqualifying, or you just liked Vance more?
So there are a couple of things about Walz. First of all, I didn't like him in the VP debate. The other thing is, for me also, January 6th was huge, but I see 2 ways of burning down the country, and they're both awful. And one way is to go after the Capitol. That is awful. And the only thing that Trump did right that day was to tell people to go down peacefully. It got that word in there. But everything else, I thought I would never vote for him. But I have friends who have a daughter. One has a daughter in Seattle. One has a daughter in Portland. And my friend in Michigan, she went around to these small towns, and to watch the amount of destruction that happened in the towns and cities, and to have Kamala actually helping to bail people out. That's another way of destroying the country. So, and Walz's position on that was huge to me.
It's great hearing. First of all, thanks on Diana. I really appreciate it. I'll see you at Christmas. Thanks for the shout out of the Sunday show. I'm kidding for anyone who thinks.
Well, can I just add? I ended up binge watching several of your YouTubes after that. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I will say in advance,
Sean doesn't want you to stop.
Yeah, and I will say first of all, thank you for the shout out on the Sunday show. We did have some audio issues at the beginning, so if you do go watch it, thank you, and just understand that we fixed it. But I love the idea, and this is kind of what we do on Two-Way, is that we have this road to 270. We brought in other people and said, you tell us what you're seeing, which I thought was kind of cool and unique. We'll do it again. And we have the updated road to 270 tomorrow. I just echo, I think what's interesting to me is when I see a lot of this stuff in the chat, and giving context to why you're voting. I get people disagree, but the beauty of this app is that we can, and this format is that we can hear where people prioritize issues. And I think too often that's the problem I see in these conversations that I have, at least with some folks on the other side, is they'll say, well, if you don't agree with me on this, I don't want to continue the conversation. And fundamentally we come to an impasse. And here I think we understand, or we can see that the way that people prioritize issues is not the same for everybody. So
yeah, I mean, because this is something to all my fellow Democrats on here who say, how could anyone ever vote for Trump? There are a lot of people who say, how could anyone ever vote for a Democrat?
Right.
You know, or they say social issues, abortion, how can, you know, but there are people who have other social issues that are very important. And to hear that and respect that, I think is very important. I'll also just say, because I have to say this, VPs, of course, matter very much because everyone knows Kamala Harris has run the country for the last 4 years, obviously. So JD Vance will then obviously be making every decision the way Mike Pence made every decision. Sorry, done. Had to say it.
I agree. I will say this. I think I've been very long standing in my position on the impact of VPs. They tend to emphasize and reinforce beliefs that you have or concerns that you have about a candidate. You know, sometimes they're too old, they're too young, they don't have the foreign policy experience, but they're not real additive. All right. That being said, can we go to Stephanie Fisher? We'll stay on the top row right now. Stephanie, have you ever been on the platform?
Oh, let's see if we can get her.
Stephanie?
Okay.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, I've been on once before when I said that Walls was my teacher in high school.
Oh, okay.
And you asked me what class, and I didn't realize you meant what class he taught, and it was U.S. history.
Welcome back.
But my comment is actually in reaction to I watched last night the spicy episode that Mark referred to, and I think I'm from Minnesota, 3-time Trump voter, and there was a comment about how Trump supporters are just uneducated and we don't understand, because there was a Trump supporter talking about how immigration really concerns her, and she has kids, and as a mother, that issue really is like what's driving her. And then the comment back to her was like about the bipartisan border bill in 2024, 3 years later, after all the damage had already been done. And she didn't know that Trump had blocked it, whatever, while he was out of office. And so then the rhetoric after that was, we just have to do a better job of educating Trump supporters. And Trump supporters just don't know what they're talking about. And I just think I speak for a lot of Trump supporters that there's nothing we hate more than that being condescended to, that we're just uneducated. And that's why we're voting for Trump, because I'm not uneducated. I watch this platform twice a day for how long, right? And we're not uneducated. We just have different values, you know? It's not just because we're too stupid to know the facts.
Thanks for coming back, Stephanie. And I agree. I mean, this goes to what Dan said a moment ago, which is a lot of times the other side. I appreciate, I've been in DC for 30 years, right? I have a lot of friends on the other side of the aisle. I respect their views. I totally and vehemently disagree with 99% of them. But I respect the fact that they believe them the same way that I believe the principles and the values that make me conservative. So I think when we tell someone that they're stupid because they don't see it our way, that's on us. So Dan?
Yeah, I mean, there is nothing that drives me more nuts as a Democrat than when our party is patronizing and says, you know, you are too stupid to know what's in your self-interest. The great book, What's the Matter with Kansas? One of the kind of worst things Democrats could ever say. I will always subscribe to the William F. Buckley adage, I would rather be governed by the first 100 names in the Cambridge phone book than the Harvard faculty any day. And I just think it is so patronizing to tell somebody that they're stupid.
Yep, so that's my comment.
All right, thank you for coming back. All right, I got to do this. Gerald from New Jersey, a Mets fan. Yep, I am that easy, folks. Wear a Mets, Rangers, Knicks, Giants hat, and you're in like Flynn. Gerald, where are you? Why are the Mets going to win, and who are you voting for?
In New Jersey, New Brunswick area. I am a Trump supporter. Sorry, Dan, but we're on the same team this month.
Like the Mets, I knew I liked you.
We welcome all parties to the Mets. Yeah.
All right. I just wanted people to know I got my New Jersey mail-in ballot, which I already mailed in. And then I got my California ballot from when I used to live in California 5 years ago. They still automatically send me a mail-in ballot. So is there anything, I'm not going to vote in both, but is there anything that can stop this or stop me from registering to vote in all 7 swing states?
Well, the answer is the law. Look, the answer is it is against the law. So casting a ballot in 2 states is a violation.
Do they have any enforcement?
No, well, yeah, I mean, if you got caught, but it is a massive issue, right? And both sides have gotten trapped on this because what happens is when you register in a new state, theoretically the state's supposed to notify the previous state and say, take, Sean or Dan or Bob or Susie off the rolls. It doesn't happen always that way. So, I mean, the onus to some degree is on the voter. It should happen more. And I agree with you. It's a massive problem. And I'm glad that governors like my governor here in Virginia are cleaning this up and doing it in a way where it's in accordance with the law. But I think it's important that you point that out because that is happening. And I read a comment this morning where someone said, it's not a significant number. And you remember how close the 2000 election was, right? My first election, 1994 in Connecticut's 2nd District, on election night, we lost by 2 votes. So you tell me, to everyone who says that it's not a problem or not significant, where's the line? When does it become significant? After 2 votes, 5 votes, 10 votes, 100 votes, 1,000 votes? I think any vote that's cast illegally or improperly undermines the system and takes away and cancels out the vote of another voter. So I have a 0 tolerance policy. I'm glad you're flagging this. And to the extent that you find it, I think it's important that we acknowledge it because when people put their head in the sand and say it doesn't exist, that's just a lie.
One of the states that's always had this problem is Florida because you have so many winter birds and they're in, New York and Illinois and Massachusetts. And this has always been a problem, including, by the way, some GOP officials who have embarrassingly been caught voting in two different places.
Yeah, so, I have a house in Port St. Lucie, Dan.
All right, home of the Mets, that's right. All right.
Yeah, and just to be clear, there's one thing, because of the way the system works, there's times when you're registered in 2 votes, but this is, again, why I have a problem with them sending out ballots without them being requested, right? Absentee ballots have worked in every state in the union forever, and suddenly we felt this need to send one to everyone. This is the reason that Jimmy Carter pointed out the potential for fraud when he co-chaired that commission. We send them out willy-nilly like this, and this is what happens. So I've always said we should make it easy for people to vote, but hard to cheat. And when you're sending out a ballot for no reason, without the voter requesting it, there's a million things that can go wrong. And I'm glad you're highlighting this issue. We need to kind of wrap up, but I want to make sure we do some balance here. Will you raise your physical hand? I see a lot of hands in the air. If you are supporting Kamala Harris. Okay, Conway. You got to just unmute yourself there.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
All right. All right. So in New York, supporting Kamala, just wanted to push back on some of the narrative that we've been hearing for a couple of reasons regarding the Black voters moving en masse, and particularly Black male voters moving en masse from Harris to Trump. For a couple of reasons. One, statistical based, and the other anecdotal based I'd like to share with the viewers to give some insights into what at least I'm seeing from within the Black community. With regard to the statistical bucket, we saw that there's a lot of polling that's coming out regarding where Black voters are coming from, and when you look into the crosstabs of it, we're seeing that the data samples are very small, not really representative of what you would need to see to be able to constitute make a definitive statement one way or the other. So we're looking for data samples of over 600 people with low margins of error, and we're seeing data samples of 200 people, where if you have a data sample that small, it only takes about 40 people to come up with 20%. You can move the numbers very, very dramatically with just a small amount of numbers. We also saw there was a poll last week that came out that was, I think it was Hill Emerson, had a pretty fair size data sample that was looking at the two states where Black voters would make the most, have the biggest constituency, the biggest electorate rather, are Georgia and North Carolina, where we have 29% of the electorate and 23% of the electorate respectively. And we saw that in the poll that came out last week, when compared to the 2020 numbers in Georgia, Trump won 11% of the Black vote in 2020. In North Carolina, he took 7% of the Black vote in North Carolina. As compared to the polling that came out last week, we saw that 11% advantage, the 11% that Trump had is down a point. It's down to 10% currently in 2024. And in North Carolina, it's down from 7 to 6%. And so there's not movement there on the data that would suggest this en masse movement that we're seeing. And so which brings me to my anecdotal point that I wanted to share. Just by way of background, I'm on the board of a lot of Black organizations, founded several organizations, a member of a Black fraternity, historically Black fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi, similar to the sorority that Kamala's a part of. We have just by way of example, there are 250,000 Black men in my fraternity. We have our own internal chat groups where tens of thousands of us are talking about these issues every single day, all times of the night and day. I was on the call with the brothers who, the Win with Black Men organization led by Khalil Thompson that had the call on July 22nd that was discussing this, where over 50,000 Black men joined and were expressing their support for Kamala. And you will see in those rooms, and this is the part I want to share with the listeners who, your non-Black listeners, is the support there is people are proud to support and enthusiastic to support Kamala. Now, because Black people are not a monolith and we have diversity of thought, you will see people who are supporting Trump, and that's fine. We understand that. But I want to say that, in my own fraternity, for example, we're talking about brothers from 18 to over 80. And across the board, generationally, it is support for Kamala in those rooms. And the support that you're going to see, I think you will still see a handful of folks black men who support Trump. And like I said, that's all right. But there's still a fundamental difference in ideology and culture from what we're hearing from the Trump campaign and what aligns with, I think, Black culture, where he's saying things that are demonstrably false that don't resonate with Black voters, I think is where he gets into trouble. Things like Haitians are eating cats and dogs, things like all Black people live in poverty, your schools are, no good. What the hell do you have to lose, as he said in 2016 during one rally. And so, the problems with that is those are things that the average lay voter can just look around and see don't align with their reality. So only 17% of Black people live in poverty. Now, mind you, that's a pretty high number as compared to other races, but that means 83% of us are not living in poverty. So when you say all Black people live in poverty, that just doesn't jive with the reality that we can look around and see for ourselves. And so those things don't ring true. And so I just want to point that out that there's certainly, I think, I wouldn't say there's an en masse movement. These are the same numbers that we've seen in 2020 that we see today. And so there's a narrative that I think the mainstream media is pushing to be more sensational and get clicks and get views and the like. And that's their agenda, and we understand that. But I just want to say that, since we try to get into the weeds of what's actually happening on this platform, share those anecdotes and some of those stats, because it doesn't align the en masse movement that the mainstream media would have you believe is out there. We're just not seeing that. It doesn't align with our lived experience.
So thank you for sharing that. I just want to make 3 quick points two to play off what you said, and then a third to number one. I think I want to give context to what people are saying to Conway, because I think it's a really interesting point that he's making. But if you do a poll of 500 people, right? So the plus or minus, I think, is 5 or 6 on a 500 sample, right? So what Conway's saying, when you ask people initially, how old are you? Are you married or not? One of the times you'll say is, do you identify as white, Asian, Black, whatever, right? So when they pull out the 32 or 41 people that are Black or Asian or whatever, that's not a statistically significant sample to actually extrapolate from, right? And so he's making a good point here, which I just want everyone to understand. I think, at least, I don't want words in Conway's mouth, but like why that makes so much sense, because a lot of times the media will jump on a poll like that because of the crosstab, but it is not what the pollsters consider statistically significant enough to extrapolate, right? Secondly, exit polls are the same way. Republicans don't answer exit polls the same way, because that's after you go out and vote. The media will send out people to random polling places and say, will you do a survey with us? So some of this data is a little flawed from the jump. But I will say, look, I've never seen so many young Black men in particular so vocally make their views known voting for a Republican than I have this cycle. Now, again, that's not statistically significant either. That's anecdotal, but I've just never seen it to the level that we have. Now, maybe it's just because technology has evolved and you can see it the way that you haven't in the past. We'll know more in 21 days. But the last point I'd make is this: the media has no interest in making this an issue, right? This is not helpful to the cause. Secondly, it's people on the left who are ringing the bell as well. It's not like the Trump campaign is out there saying this. And then this is the last point, which is I get our party still sucks with people of color. So going from 17 to 24 is still an F. But if we're making progress, I think that's a good thing, right? So 24% of any demographic is not good. It's, and my kid came home and said, hey, don't worry, Dad, I got a 24 and last time I got a 15. I'd still say you got a lot of work to do, son.
Got a lot of work to do. Yeah.
Right.
No, and one thing on that point real quick, just I think what you are seeing generationally is that the Gen Z, they view things through the Gen Z lens. They are more removed from that civil rights movement from the 64 and 65 Voting Rights Act, that era. Such that they're not taking a lot of the things that we take as a given. They're not accepting those as a given. They don't accept. They don't like how Biden handled Gaza. They don't accept that. Democrats are supposed to just vote for Democrats, and so they're more critical of the Democratic Party, which I think is great, and expressing a real frustration that I think a lot of Black people have with the return on investment that they've seen or not seen from the Democratic Party. And I think that's a completely legitimate criticism to have. But it doesn't go so far as to say, because I'm having this disagreement with a party that I can move my agenda through, therefore I'm going to go over here to the other side who's saying that I eat dogs and cats.
No, Conway, thank you for coming on. You great words. The only thing I would just kind of disagree a little bit is it is a problem, which is why the Harris campaign and Barack Obama and everybody is jumping, out and kind of throwing ideas and messaging to a specific community. Like there is some drift primarily with non-college educated Blacks. But to your point, Harris is likely still to win 75%. I just have one quick question and then we need to wrap this up. How did you take Barack Obama's message the other day that, hey, some people, the only reason you might be doing this is you got a problem with her as a woman. Did you chuckle at it? Did you find that convincing?
No, I think it's important. I heard your comment, Dan, about how Bill Clinton would not do that. And I think there is an important distinction to make there. I personally didn't have a problem with it. I can understand how people will find that as a lecturing, as chastising. I take their point. I don't think you can chastise voters into voting for a candidate. You have to win through policies, and I think you're starting to see more of that. That being said, I think what Obama was expressing as kind of this elder statesman, the position that he has, the position of reverence that he has within the Black community is one in which he feels like he wants to be on the record on this to say, look, I don't like the way speaking to that narrative, if that is the way that some of you considering going. Let me speak out against that. And that's fine. He has his right to do that. But I take your point that probably is not well received if the goal is to motivate voters to move in Kamala's direction.
Thank you for coming on. You're great. Please come back.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I didn't warn the affiliates today because when Mark left, he left a credit card and we bought the affiliates. So we own them now, unless Mark's card gets declined. But thank you for sticking with us. Great conversation. Dan, you got anything you want to add before we wrap?
Mark will be on tonight at 6 p.m. I think he'll have some great guests. Look for an email, this afternoon. But otherwise, thank you all for joining, and it'll be an interesting day today on the trail.
Yeah, you saw his two guests. He's got that guy with the hair, and then the other woman. I couldn't see it; it flashed quick, but he's got those two guests coming on tonight. And then,
John, you have any? You want to make a pitch for your show tonight? You got
sure. Yeah, let's go ahead and head. We've got Newt Gingrich on tonight.
Now.
Newt Gingrich on tonight at 6, and then Road to 270 update tomorrow with all the great data that we gleaned on Sunday night. So thank you all. I appreciate everybody. I mean, the numbers, you guys keep sharing the platform and letting people know, and we see it. So thank you for that. Continue to ask people to join us at 9 every day, and raise your hand. We'll try to get to more and more people, but I appreciate it. We got 21 days to go. This is the place to be.
3 weeks from today, everybody. Get excited.
Take care.